What's up, YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. I don't know why the non-metal mid-year list always takes so much longer to put out than the metal one. I've been doing these for I think 5 years and it always happens that way. But what's funny, this year in particular, these records were so easy to pick out. I've had them since I think late June. Let's see, couple electronic records, country made it in here, which I always love. Couple of 90s alternative artists still making great music 30 years later, that's always fun. We got hip hop, of course. Number one, it really surprised me. I can't wait to talk about that one. Yeah, we got a good mix here. Like I said in the video that just dropped, second quarter of this year in particular, I can't remember a better 3-month run for music in the last several years. And of course, a lot of the artists that I mentioned in that video ended up here. Again, it's a good mix of records here. I am extraordinarily confident that at least one of these 10 records will be something where you're like, you know what? I'm really glad I tried that out. So just do yourself a favor, listen to these. As always, please comment below with your list, because especially with the non-metal thing, I always miss a lot of records, and let's get into it. This Fratellis record is a lot of fun. It is an admittedly significant drop from my love and adoration of these other 9 records that we're gonna talk about, but I noticed around the mid-year just how much I had been coming back to it. I'm like, shit, I gotta include this. They have, a pretty classic indie rock sound on most of the record, like the opening title track, which just sounds like it belongs on the soundtrack to season 1 of Community. Oh Roxy is another one. Last Songbird. These are all pretty par for the course. But then I really enjoy hearing the band's sound expand just a little bit to include these big, bright, blaring, festive horn sections. Need a Little Love. Love that track. I also love the single 6 Days in June, which almost has like a march to it. The balladry is very well executed too, particularly with the strong closer, Hello Stranger, some great lyrics on there. And just in general, the hook writing is so sharp throughout these quick 10 tracks. Not only with the highlights I've already talked about, but also the extremely peppy and addictive Living in the Dark, which is one of my favorite tracks. Just a lot of really fun tunes here, easily digestible, definitely a summertime album. Favorite tracks, Living in the Dark, Need a Little Love, title track. All right, Tyler's next. I had heard this record maybe 5 times when I decided to actually include it on this list, but I just can't believe the run this guy is on. 3 year-end list contenders in a row, and they could not be more different from each other. I swear, if this guy wasn't such a goofball and such a kind of iconoclastic figure early on in his career, he would be right smack dab in the middle of that legacy conversation, the sort of ongoing debate about which rappers in our generation will have made the lasting bodies of work that future generations look back on very fondly. Obviously, Kendrick being kind of the first name that pops in your head. And he may still be kind of misperceived, and people might still see him as this sort of nihilistic, burn it all down personality, but Tyler has quietly become this very reliable source of constantly evolving and experimenting and, most of all, emotionally incisive output. And actually, much like Igor and like Flower Boy, Tyler succeeds here by stripping away the ironic detachment of his earlier work. The only difference here being that this time around, he's feeling himself. There's a lot of bravado here, just oozing out of the speakers. And I would say appropriately, we have DJ Drama yelling over this thing, much like Kid Capri did on Damn. And just great beat selection, lots of earworms. You'd love to see Pharrell pop up on here. Yeah, I mean, it's still early, but my hunch, for me personally, is that when all is said and done, I am going to prefer this to the lo-fi vulnerability of Igor. Favorite tracks, Run It Up, Rise, and Lumberjack. The wonderful and talented Liz Faire is up next with Sober-ish, which is a fucking great album title. Her voice, above all else, is what draws me in initially, and frankly, that's enough. But when we zoom out a little bit, her songwriting has this combination of intimacy and intelligence and self-awareness and self-deprecation that I find just so endearing and nowhere more prevalent than on Ba 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 or on the title track or on Bad Kitty to kind of a humorous degree, I might add. This is probably the only record on this list where I enjoy just reading the lyrics all on their own. I love the way she writes. And on top of that, these 12 songs are so smoothly sequenced because she does explore a variety of moods and tempos, but it all just fits perfectly. Favorite track, Spanish Doors, Bad Kitty, Soul Sucker. For country, I have been obsessed with Morgan Wade. Her debut album, Reckless, feels like the beginning of a fucking awesome career. Her voice has this incredibly sexy twang to it, and it allows her on the musical side of things to sort of drift in and out of country. Like Last Cigarette and the amazing lead single Wilder Days, these songs have more of like a heartland rock influence. And then the title track on here is basically a rock song, but then tracks like, the folky Mend, it's a really great ballad, and the wistful Northern Air, these songs are definitely more rooted in country. And Morgan's voice is so commanding and such a presence that it allows the record to stay very cohesive through these changes. It really does feel like a cohesive country album. And at her relatively young age, she already sings like someone who has been through a lot of shit and has that sort of battle-worn wisdom that all good country requires. And to that end, the lyric writing here is outstanding. Particularly the very heavy exploration of loss on the song Northern Air, made my favorite song on the album. Breathtaking song musically too. I enjoy the very specific concept behind the opener Wilder Days, about dating someone sort of after they've already made some big change in their life, and having this never-ending curiosity and almost FOMO about like what were you like before. And one more thing I have to say that's super unique about this record, the sheer amount of slow songs. Like if we break it down, it's maybe 70% of the track list, which typically bothers the shit out of me. I actually have a term for it, ballad syndrome. But in this case, I love these songs so much that it absolutely doesn't bother me at all. It's this weird exception, which is another reason that this record is kind of notable for me. Favorite songs, Northern Air, Wilder Days, and Mend. In the dance world, I listened to this Kashmir record, Harmonica Andromeda, a shit ton. There are so many attention-grabbing moments all over this thing, whether it's the more intricate and more sample-heavy stuff like Gypsy Waltz and the title track, or it's the big dumb EDM anthems like Around the World and I Will Be a Lion, or it's the slightly more darker kind of tribal sounding stuff, Blood in the Water, Song of War. It's just so effortless how it all comes together. And what makes Harmonica Andromeda so different from all the other records that we're discussing here is that truly within me it elicits pure joy, like cartoonish, like Pixar movie joy. I can't explain it. As you may have guessed, I'm not exactly drawn to music for that necessarily. Most of these albums on here I'm drawn to for their negativity in some form or another, but this album is just different. The best examples of that and the best songs are Little Voice, Around the World, and the hard-hitting title track. Entering into the top 5 now, we've got a real deal hard rock record here with Royal Blood's Typhoons. I was instantly drawn to the singles when they started dropping for this thing back in I think January, and then when the full album actually came out, this 11-track, 38-minute affair just felt like a natural expansion of what I was already loving. I'm always searching for that searing, no-frills hard rock record. I feel like it's harder and harder to find as time goes on, but I listen to tracks on here like Boilermaker and Hold On and Who Needs Friends and the title track, and they're just such energetic cuts with these simple but sharp riffs. I mean, Boilermaker in particular, just fucking nasty. I've actually had that riff stuck in my head all day today before shooting this. And production-wise, they do have a sleek, modern sheen, but they do hit hard. And we have one ballad to close it out. We have a couple of moments like Limbo and in A Million and One that feel a little more updated and more 21st century, and just, yeah, it's an awesome fucking record. Whether you're more of the alt-rock Queens of the Stone Age crowd or you're just a hard rock fan in general, it really does work both ways. Favorite tracks, Boilermaker, title track, and Either You Want It. Garbage, back with a vengeance on No Gods, No Masters, which I already had a lot of fun talking about this record in the Q2 video, how frontwoman Shirley Manson just has this visceral hatred just pouring out of her all across this record. The kind of emotions, kind of raw emotions that you just cannot manufacture if you paid the most amazingly talented actress in the world. The subject matter here is mostly gender issues and the associated power dynamics, although that subject is kind of tackled from a lot of different angles, whether it's something more direct and kind of hilariously confrontational, like the Industrial Teenage Godhead, which is my favorite song on here, or it's more of like a subtle social dissection, like Flipping the Bird. I'd have to qualify this statement by going back and listening to their whole catalog, but on its face, this is Garbage's most political record. Also, some of their darkest music ever is on here, like Woman Destroyed, Waiting for God, too. This record is so intense for a band like 30 years into their career, which I fucking love. And of the original 11 tracks, I love every single one, but I will single out Godhead, Anonymous XXX, and Flipping the Bird. The lovely Ashley Monroe is next with Rose Gold, very likely to be my most calming and most serene pop listen for 2021. I mean, it's really hard to imagine anybody beats tracks on here like Siren and Drive and Silk, which Silk in particular I described as kind of like Beach House's Depression Cherry if it was a little less spacey and just had an ever so slight country tinge to it, which is like the highest compliment I can give anything. Her voice all over this record is just nothing short of angelic. It just does something to my brain. And I love how even though this is very much a pop album and her voice is 100% suited to sing over these varying instrumentals, there's a little bit of hip hop creepy in here, all that, you still do feel and hear that country influence come back just ever so slightly with of course Drive and with Till It Breaks. So while this very much is a spacey nighttime listen, not unlike a Beach House record, there's a little bit more to it than that. Favorite songs are Drive and Silk and Flying. Porter Robinson. I think it's safe to say that Nurture is my most anticipated record of the past 6 years. Like, I can't think of any other record where I wanted it this bad for this long and had so much waiting to do and so much like life changes happen in between. I now know how diehard Guns N' Roses fans must have felt, although to be fair, this actually lived up to the wait. It did take me quite a while to get into just because of how far removed it was and how big of a leap it was from Worlds, although I don't know if I can call it a leap because it did take 7 years to come out, but that there was a lot of growth that happened in that interim. But what's crazy is that even though the songwriting and the instrumentals and the arrangements are so far removed from how Worlds sounded, it's actually, I think, the lyric writing where you see the most growth. These are truly fully formed songs telling stories, not just collections of beats, which this genre is known for. Musician, Mother, Trying to Feel Alive, Unfold. These are songs that, you know, while I marvel at the fairly complex arrangements, it's actually the lyrics that I deeply connect with and that resonate with me. I mean, this was an absolute layup for my top few albums. I'll be curious to see where it is in December, but I feel like 2 is pretty high. Favorite tracks, I'm going to go really basic. I'm going to go Musician, Look at the Sky, and Unfold. And number 1, to my genuine surprise here, is this amazing Girl in Red album. I have abused the repeat button on this thing very much the way that she abuses herself psychologically in the lyrics here, because this is a very raw and vulnerable but thorough exploration of mental health issues. That's what the record really is about. And it's mostly drawing on her own experiences because, let's face it, kids these days aren't exactly known for stepping outside of themselves, so we get a lot of self-obsession here, or at least self-obsession in regards to her feelings about her intimate relationships around her. But here's the thing about this record. It's not at all woe is me in the way that it sounds, because these very heavy and weighty themes are just expertly woven into what is, for me, the hookiest music of the year. I'll Call You Mine, Body and Mind, the neo-folky song Rue, the ballad Apartment 402, the kind of pop-punk tinge, very spunky You Stupid Bitch. These songs are amazing. They are so goddamn addictive, and yet they vividly portray very specific issues. I mean, I think the fact that the lead single on this album is called Serotonin might be a little bit of an indicator without you having to hear a note of this album. And one more specific thing that I need to praise about Girl in Red on this album is that she has this just obsessive focus on phrasing. The vocal phrasings on these songs are so deliberate and so perfectly symmetrical that her voice really almost becomes like an instrument. It's almost surgical. Like if we were talking about this like a hip-hop record, if this was a hip-hop record, all I would be talking about is how precise her flow is. Like, just listen to how tightly those vocal cadences line up. In just the first 2 songs on here, Did You Come and Serotonin, it instantly makes them feel huge, makes them feel memorable. It makes them sort of stick in your head that much quicker and that much more of a neat and tidy fashion. And you know, I am a sucker for a to-the-point album, and here we have 10 equally amazing songs, one very pretty outro to just gently send the album off and very cleverly complete the full album title. This is the album. I mean, putting this anything other than number 1 would have been completely dishonest. It is just very much a to-the-point pop record, so I'll be curious to see what kind of staying power it has and how I feel about it in December. But for now, again, it would have been dishonest to put it anywhere but number 1. Favorite tracks, probably Rue, Body and Mind, and I'll Call You Mine. Fuck yeah. I feel really good about that list. I know I mentioned this in the metal video, but 2021 in general has just been fantastic for music. No complaints from here. But you know, I'm sure I missed a shit ton of stuff, especially for the non-metal video, because that's such an expansive category. So please be sure to comment below this video with your list. Hopefully you get at least one great album from mine, and we'll see what stays when December rolls around. And as always, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, as well as checking out any of the other music-related content that I publish here on a regular basis. I really appreciate you guys watching, liking, disliking, just engaging in any fashion. Twitter, Instagram handle @RyanPannyMusic. Again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.